Okay, so in last week's lessons, we learned how to multiply a whole number times a fraction times a unit fraction, and then we learned how to multiply a whole number times other kinds of fractions. So just to review, when we multiply a whole number times a fraction, we take our whole number times our numerator. So in this case, 3 times 1 would be 3. And our denominator stays the same, so we would have 3/3. Remember, multiplication is the same as repeated addition, so 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 would be 3/3. Same thing when we do a whole number times a fraction that's not a unit fraction. We take our whole number times our numerator, so 5 times 2 would be 10, and we keep the denominator the same, so we still have fifths. Now, both of these numbers could be changed because if we have a pizza cut into thirds and we eat all 3 of them, then we ate the whole thing. So 3/3 would be the same as 1 whole. And if we have 10 fifths, 5 fifths makes 1 whole, 10 fifths would make 2 wholes. So 10 fifths would be the same as 2. Okay. All right, so moving on, here's our new skill, multiplying whole numbers times mixed numbers. So that would look like this. So we have our mixed number, 3 1/3. So we have a mixture of a whole number with a fraction, and then we have a whole number, okay? This can also be written the other direction. So you could have the 7 first times 3 1/3. So we do it the same way. I want you to kind of think of when we do our multiplication, okay? So we have 7 times 3 1/3. So it's kind of the same as our partial products multiplication, okay? Up on the top, we have 7. And on the bottom, we have 3 1/3. So we're going to take our 7 times 3, which would be 21. And then we take our 7 times 1/3, which would be 7/3. Okay, so that's how we would multiply a whole number times a mixed number. We take our whole number times our whole number and get 21, and then we take our whole number times our fraction. Now make sure that you don't, just like when we do partial products multiplication, don't take this whole times this fraction because that's part of the same thing. We don't want to multiply those two. We take the whole number that's by itself times the fraction that's in the other number. So if we do some story problems here. Each member of the flute section of the Briarwoods Elementary School band, spelled school wrong, practiced for 2 3/5 hours last week. There are 5 flute players. What is the total number of hours they practiced? So think about for a second what you would do to solve this problem. So if there are 5 flute players, we have 5 groups times the amount of time that they practiced. 2 3/5. So remember, when we multiply, we're going to take our whole number times our whole number. So 5 times 2 would be 10. And then we're going to take our whole number times the fraction from the other number. So 5 times 3/5. So we take our whole number times our numerator is 15. And our denominator stays 5. Now, 15/5 is an improper fraction because the number on top is larger. So you can change this into wholes because we know we have more than 1 whole. So 5/5 would be 1 whole. 10/5 would be 2 wholes. 15/5 would actually be 3 more wholes. So this part is equal to 3 wholes by itself. So we have 10 wholes and 3 more wholes. So that is actually equal to 13 hours that they practiced during that week. Now it tells us, in the second problem, the trumpet section of the band has 3 more members than the flute section. Each trumpet player practiced for 1 9/10 hours last week. How many hours did the trumpet players practice in all? Okay, so think about that one for a second. You can pause the video. So if the trumpet section has 3 more members, this one had 5, so 5 plus 3 means that the trumpets have 8 people. And they each practiced for 1 9/10 hours. Okay, so here's our new problem, 8 times 1 9/10. So we're going to take our whole number times our whole number, 8 times 1, and that would be 8. And then we take our whole number times our fraction in the second number. So 8 times 9 would be 72. And then tenths is our denominator. So we know 72 tenths is way more than 1 whole, right? So 10 tenths would be 1 whole. So we can count by 10 tenths. 10 tenths, 20 tenths, 30 tenths, 40 tenths, 50 tenths, 60 tenths, 70 tenths. That's 7 wholes. I can't make any more. So 72 tenths would be equal to 7 wholes. And then how many more tenths would I have? If I used 70, I have 2 tenths left. So that would be equal to 7 2 tenths. So this part is equal to 7 2 tenths. This is equal to 8. So 8 plus 7 2 tenths would be 15 2 tenths. So if we look at our 2 problems, the trumpet players practiced for the flute players practiced for 13 hours. The trumpet players practiced for 15 2 tenths hours. So which section practiced more during that week? And it would be the trumpets. Even though they didn't practice as long because they had more players, they ended up practicing a total of greater than the flutes did. All right, so moving on to some practice here. We have 7 times 1 3/8. See if you can figure that one out. Actually, why don't you go ahead and do all 3 of these, and then you can unpause the video and I'll go over the answers. Okay, so 7 times 1 3/8. We multiply our whole number times our whole number, so that would be 7. And then our whole number times our fraction. 7 times our numerator of 3 is 21. And then our denominator is 8. So you could leave your answer like that. Or if you want to change 21/8 into into a mixed number, you can. So 21/8 would be equal to 8/8 would be 1, 16/8 would be 2. And if I've used 16 of these to make wholes, then how many more do I have left? I would have 5/8 more. So this 21/8 is equal to 2 5/8, so we'd have 7 plus 2 5/8 more. So that would be equal to 9 5/8 for the first one. But you could also have 7 21/8, that's fine too. 5 times 2 2/5, we take our whole number times our whole number, so 5 times 2 would be 10. And then we take our whole number times our fraction, so 5 times 2 is 10, and our denominator is 5. So 10 10/5, and 10/5 is the same as 2 wholes, so you could also have that as equal to 12. You could have either one of those answers, that's fine. 6 times 3 3/10, take your whole number times your whole number, that would be 18. And then your whole number times your fraction, 6 times 3/10. 6 times 3 is 18. And then our denominator is 10. So 18 tenths would be our improper fraction. 18 tenths would be the same as 10 tenths plus 8 tenths, which would be the same as 1 8 tenths. So 18 plus 1 8 tenths would be 19 8 tenths. So you could have either one of those answers, 18 8 tenths or 19 8 tenths. If you want to do more practice on this, IXL Skill S14 is perfect. It starts out with whole numbers times fractions, and then there's whole numbers times mixed numbers, and it all has to do with recipes, which is a very good skill to learn. I'm going to show you the homework for today, and I've crossed some stuff out here. So there's some story problems. You do not need to do this part unless you want to. You sure can if you want to, but you don't have to. So just figure out the problem that you would do and your answer. And then down below you have 2 that are adding fractions and 2 that are subtracting fractions. So Good luck with your work for today, and check back later to see the answers to your homework.